The abduction. Dr. Zara Novak peered into her microscope, her brow furrowed in concentration. The alien bacteria sample squirmed under her gaze, its bioluminescent membrane pulsing with an otherworldly rhythm. She adjusted the focus, her expert eyes cataloging every minute detail of the extraterrestrial life form. "Fascinating," she murmured, reaching for her data pad to jot down her observations. The lab around her hummed with the soft whir of advanced equipment, a symphony of human ingenuity meeting the challenge of understanding the cosmos. Zara straightened, stretching her back after hours hunched over her work. Through the lab's expansive windows, the red sands of Mars stretched to the horizon, broken only by the gleaming domes of Eris Station. Humanity's first permanent settlement on another planet had been her home for the past 3 years, and she wouldn't have it any other way. A chime from her comm unit broke the silence. "Dr. Novak," a gruff voice announced, "we've got an anomaly in Sector 7. Some weird energy readings. Mind taking a look?" "On my way, Chief," Zara replied, already reaching for her environment suit. Any break in the monotony of the Martian landscape could be the discovery of a lifetime. As she made her way through the station's corridors, Zara's mind raced with possibilities. Perhaps it was a previously undiscovered geothermal vent, or traces of ancient microbial life preserved in the planet's iron-rich soil. Whatever it was, she was determined to unlock its secrets. The airlock hissed as Zara stepped out onto the rusty surface of Mars. She took a moment to marvel at the view. No matter how many times she saw it, the alien beauty of the red planet never failed to take her breath away. Then, with practiced ease, she activated her suit's propulsion system and glided towards Sector 7. As she approached the coordinates, Zara's suit's sensors began to pick up the anomalous readings. They were like nothing she had ever seen before, a swirling vortex of energy that seemed to defy the laws of physics. She landed gently on the Martian soil, her heart pounding with excitement and a hint of trepidation. "Base, are you seeing this?" she called over the comm. Static answered her. Frowning, Zara tapped her helmet, checking the connection. Still nothing but crackling silence. That was when she saw it, a shimmer in the air, like heat haze on a summer day. But this was no mirage. The very fabric of space seemed to ripple and tear, revealing a gaping maw of swirling light. Zara stumbled backward, her scientific curiosity warring with a primal instinct to flee. Before she could make a decision, tendrils of energy lashed out from the vortex, enveloping her in a cocoon of crackling power. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips as she was yanked off her feet and into the unknown. The world dissolved into a kaleidoscope of impossible colors and mind-bending geometries. Zara felt her consciousness stretched to its limits, teetering on the edge of madness. Just when she thought she could take no more, reality snapped back into focus with brutal suddenness. She found herself sprawled on a cold, metallic floor, gasping for breath. The familiar weight of her environment suit was gone, replaced by the thin fabric of her lab uniform. Zara blinked, her eyes struggling to adjust to the dim, alien lighting that surrounded her. As her vision cleared, she realized she was in some sort of holding cell. The walls were a dull gray, seamless, and oppressive. A faint hum permeated the air, accompanied by an occasional metallic groan that seemed to come from deep within the structure she was in. Zara pushed herself to her feet, fighting down a wave of nausea. "Hello," she called out, her voice hoarse and shaky. "Is anyone there?" A series of clicks and whirs answered her. A section of the wall slid open, revealing a corridor beyond. 2 figures stepped into view, and Zara's breath caught in her throat. They were unmistakably alien, tall and lithe, with smooth, silvery skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Their faces were angular, dominated by large, multifaceted eyes that regarded her with cold intelligence. 4 arms emerged from their torsos, each ending in long, dexterous fingers. One of the aliens stepped forward, its mouth opening to reveal rows of sharp, needle-like teeth. It spoke, a series of musical clicks and trills that Zara couldn't begin to comprehend. When she didn't respond, the creature tilted its head, then reached up to touch a small device affixed to its throat. "You will come with us, human," it said, the words stilted and mechanical, clearly the product of some sort of translation device. "Resistance is inadvisable." Zara's mind reeled. First contact with an alien species, the dream of every xenobiologist, and it was happening like this. Abducted from Mars, held captive by creatures beyond her wildest imagination. She took a deep breath, steeling herself. "Who are you?" she demanded, proud that her voice didn't waver. "Why have you brought me here?" The alien's multifaceted eyes seemed to ripple, perhaps their equivalent of blinking. "We are Vrax," it replied. "You are cargo, valuable cargo. You will fetch a high price." A chill ran down Zara's spine as the implications of those words sank in. "Price," she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Your slavers." The Vrax made a sound that might have been laughter, a harsh, grating noise that set Zara's teeth on edge. "Smart for a primitive species," it said. "Yes, human. You are to be sold. Your kind is rare in the galactic market. Exotic. Collectors will pay well for you." Anger flared in Zara's chest, momentarily overwhelming her fear. "I am not property," she spat. "I am Dr. Zara Novak, xenobiologist of Earth's aerostation on Mars. I demand you return me at once." The Vrax's second set of arms whipped out, faster than Zara's eyes could follow. She felt a sharp sting on her neck, and the world began to spin. As darkness crept in at the edges of her vision, she heard the alien speak once more. "You are whatever we say you are, human. And now you are unconscious cargo." Zara's last thought before the darkness claimed her was a fervent hope that someone somewhere had noticed her disappearance. That Earth would not let one of its daughters vanish into the cold depths of space without a fight. When Zara regained consciousness, she found herself in a new environment. Gone was the stark, oppressive cell. Instead, she lay on a soft surface in a room that seemed designed for comfort, at least comfort as interpreted by an alien mind. The walls were a pale, luminescent blue that pulsed gently, almost soothingly. The air was thick with a sweet floral scent that made her head swim. As Zara sat up, she realized she had been changed out of her lab uniform. She now wore a shimmering, form-fitting garment that seemed to shift colors as she moved. "Good, you're awake," a melodious voice said. Zara turned to see another alien, different from the Vrax. This one was shorter, with iridescent scales and large, liquid eyes. "I was beginning to worry the sedative had been too strong for your physiology." Zara scrambled backward, her back pressing against the wall. "Who are you? Where am I?" The alien held up its hands, 4 of them, like the Vrax, but webbed and tipped with small suction cups. "Peace, human. I am Xiri, caretaker of this preparation chamber. You are aboard the Grand Bazaar, the largest trading station in the Outer Rim." "Trading station," Zara repeated, her scientific mind latching onto the new information even as her heart raced with fear. "You mean a slave market?" Xiri's scales rippled, changing from a soft blue to a muted purple. "Such an ugly word," it said, its voice tinged with what might have been regret. "But yes, that is the essential nature of this place. I am sorry, truly. Your species is new to the galactic stage. You do not deserve this." Zara's mind whirled, trying to process the magnitude of what she was hearing. A galactic slave trade, multiple alien species, humanity, so proud of its first steps into the solar system, was nothing more than an exotic novelty in a vast, uncaring universe. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked, watching Xiri carefully. "Aren't you one of them? The slavers?" Xiri's scales shifted again, this time to a deep, sorrowful blue. "I was once as you are now," it said softly. "Torn from my home, sold to the highest bidder. Now, I serve to ease the transition for others. It is not much, but is what I can do." A spark of hope flared in Zara's chest. Then help me escape. Surely you must know a way out of here." Ziri shook its head, tendrils waving gently around its face. "I am sorry, but there is no escape from the Grand Bazaar. The Vrax's security systems are beyond anything your species has yet imagined. To attempt escape would mean certain death, or worse." Zara slumped, the brief hope extinguished as quickly as it had ignited. "So that's it. I'm to be sold like an animal, to spend the rest of my life as someone's pet." "Not necessarily," Ziri said, its voice taking on a conspiratorial tone. "Listen carefully, human. The galaxy is vast, and not all species agree with the Vrax's methods. There are those who work in secret to undermine the slave trade. If you are patient, if you are clever, you may yet find a way to freedom." Before Zara could press for more information, a chime sounded throughout the room. Ziri's scales paled to an almost translucent white. "Our time is up," it said hurriedly. "Remember human patience and cleverness. And know this, you are not alone. There are others like you, from 100 different worlds. Find them. Together, you may yet change your stars." With that, Ziri scurried from the room, leaving Zara alone with her thoughts. She took a deep breath, forcing down the panic that threatened to overwhelm her. She was Dr. Zara Novak, xenobiologist of Earth. She had unraveled the mysteries of alien microbes and unlocked secrets hidden in Martian rocks. She would not break. She would not give up. As the door to her chamber slid open and 2 Vrax guards entered, Zara lifted her chin defiantly. Whatever lay ahead, she would face it with the indomitable spirit that had carried humanity to the stars, and somehow, someway, she would find a path back home. The guards seized her arms, their grip firm but not cruel. As they led her from the preparation chamber, Zara's keen eyes darted about, taking in every detail of her surroundings. Knowledge was power, and she intended to learn everything she could about this alien world she had been thrust into. The corridors of the Grand Bazaar were a riot of sights, sounds, and smells. Aliens of every description bustled past, some bipedal, others slithering or floating, defying easy categorization. The air was thick with a cacophony of languages, most beyond Zara's ability to comprehend. As they walked, Zara caught glimpses of other captives. Some were alien species she had never imagined, while others, her heart clenched as she saw a group of humans, huddled together, fear etched on their faces. How many of her people had been taken? How long had this been going on without Earth's knowledge? The guards brought her to a halt before a massive set of doors. Intricate patterns swirled across their surface, seeming to move and shift as Zara watched. With a sound like a great beast sighing, the doors swung open, revealing the true heart of the Grand Bazaar. It was a vast chamber, stretching farther than Zara's eyes could see. Countless beings of all shapes and sizes milled about, examining the wares on display. And there, in transparent chambers that lined the walls, stood the captives, living beings reduced to mere commodities. As the Vrax guards led her towards an empty chamber, Zara's mind raced. Ziri's words echoed in her thoughts, patience and cleverness. She would bide her time, gather information, and wait for her moment. And when that moment came, she would be ready. For now, as the transparent walls closed around her, and she felt the eyes of potential buyers upon her, Zara stood tall. She was humanity's unwilling ambassador to this dark corner of the galaxy, and somehow, some way, she would find a path not just to her own freedom, but to a future where no sentient being was ever treated as property again. The auction was about to begin, and with it, the next chapter in Zara's unexpected journey among the stars. The underground. The transparent walls of Zara's containment chamber did little to muffle the cacophony of the Grand Bazaar. A symphony of alien languages assaulted her ears, punctuated by the occasional bark of laughter or cry of despair. She stood tall, refusing to cower before the countless eyes that raked over her form, assessing her value like she was nothing more than a prized livestock. As the hours dragged on, Zara's scientific mind kicked into overdrive, cataloging every detail of her surroundings. The chamber itself was a marvel of technology, maintaining a perfect atmosphere tailored to her physiological needs. The floor beneath her feet hummed with energy, and she suspected it could be used to incapacitate unruly merchandise if necessary. Beyond her prison, the diversity of alien life forms was staggering. Beings of every conceivable shape and size moved through the bazaar. Some were vaguely humanoid, while others defied easy classification. Zara saw creatures that seemed to be made of living crystal, gelatinous masses that oozed along, leaving iridescent trails, and even what appeared to be sentient clouds of gas contained within elaborate suits. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" a voice whispered, startling Zara from her observations. She turned to see a human man in the chamber next to hers, separated by a thin barrier that was nearly invisible to the naked eye. He was older, with graying hair and lines of worry etched deep into his face, but his eyes sparked with intelligence and barely contained anger. "I'm Dr. Marcus Chen," he continued, keeping his voice low. "Xenolinguist. I was studying ruins on an uncharted world when these bastards snatched me. You're new here, aren't you?" Zara nodded, relief flooding through her at the sound of a human voice. "Dr. Zara Novak, xenobiologist. They took me from Mars I'm not even sure how long ago. How long have you been here?" Marcus's expression darkened. "Too long. Weeks, maybe months. It's hard to keep track in this place. But listen, we don't have much time before they separate us. There's an underground network here, slaves and sympathizers working together. If you're smart and careful, you might be able to make contact." Before Zara could press for more information, a commotion near the entrance to the auction hall caught her attention. A group of new captives was being brought in, and among them was a sight that made Zara's breath catch in her throat. It was unmistakably a child, not human, but clearly young, with wide, frightened eyes and trembling limbs. The creature was avian in appearance, covered in downy feathers of vibrant blue and green. As Zara watched in horror, the child was roughly shoved into a nearby containment chamber. "Monsters," Marcus spat, his hands clenching into fists. "That's a Kalian. Their entire species is on the brink of extinction, and these vultures are selling their children to the highest bidder." Zara felt sick to her stomach. The enormity of the injustice she was witnessing threatened to overwhelm her. But as she watched the terrified Kalian child, something shifted within her. The spark of defiance that had kept her going since her abduction blazed into an inferno of righteous anger. "We have to do something," she whispered fiercely. "This can't be allowed to continue." Marcus nodded, a grim smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Now you're thinking like a member of the resistance. Listen carefully. In 3 days, there will be a changing of the guard. That's when." His words were cut off as a jolt of electricity coursed through the floor of his chamber. Marcus convulsed, then slumped to the ground, unconscious. Zara whirled to see a Vrax guard approaching, its multifaceted eyes fixed on her with cold intensity. No communication between merchandise, it clicked, the translation device rendering its words in a flat, emotionless tone. "Further infractions will result in disciplinary action." Zara bit back a retort, knowing it would only make things worse. As the guard moved away, she cast one last glance at Marcus's prone form before turning her attention back to the auction floor. Her mind raced, processing the fragments of information he had managed to convey. An underground resistance, a changing of the guard in 3 days. It wasn't much to go on, but it was a start. Zara took a deep breath, centering herself. She would be ready when the moment came. The next few days passed in a blur of sensory overload and mounting tension. Zara was moved several times, placed on display for various potential buyers. She endured their scrutiny with as much dignity as she could muster, all the while keeping her eyes and ears open for any scrap of useful information. She learned that the Grand Bazaar was more than just a slave market. It was a massive space station, a nexus of trade for the entire sector. Legal and illegal goods flowed through its corridors, greasing the wheels of a vast interstellar economy. The Vrax, it seemed, were merely one of several species that controlled the station, though they appeared to be the primary force behind the slave trade. On the third day, just as Marcus had said, there was a flurry of activity among the guards. Zara watched closely as Vrak's soldiers were replaced by a new shift, noting the brief window of confusion and disorganization that accompanied the change. It happened so quickly that Zara almost missed it. A small object, no larger than a coin, skittered across the floor and came to rest at her feet. Without thinking, she bent down and palmed it, praying that none of the guards had noticed. Hours passed, and Zara's nerves were stretched to the breaking point. Had she imagined it? Was this some sort of test? Finally, when the bazaar's artificial day cycle dimmed to simulate night, she dared to examine her prize. It was a data chip, unlike any technology she had seen on Earth. As she turned it over in her hands, it began to glow softly, and a tiny holographic projection sprang to life above her palm. The message was brief, written in a dozen different alien scripts. Among them, Zara was relieved to see, was English. Hope lives, patience, courage, you are not alone. As quickly as it had appeared, the message vanished and the chip crumbled to dust in Zara's hand. She let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. It wasn't much, but it was confirmation. The resistance was real, and they knew she was here. Over the next several days, Zara found herself being moved with increasing frequency. The Vraks seemed to be having trouble finding a buyer willing to meet their exorbitant price for a human specimen. Each move brought new opportunities to observe and gather intelligence. She saw other humans occasionally, but was never close enough to communicate. However, she began to notice patterns in the behavior of some of the other slaves and even a few of the station's staff. Subtle gestures, words spoken just a bit too loudly, objects dropped and retrieved in ways that seemed just slightly too deliberate. Zara realized she was witnessing the secret language of the underground resistance. Slowly, painstakingly, she began to decipher its nuances. It was during one such move that she saw him for the first time. A human man, but not a captive. He moved with the confidence of someone who belonged, dressed in the eclectic style common to many of the free traders who frequented the bazaar. His eyes met hers for just a moment as she was led past, and Zara felt a jolt of recognition. There was a depth of understanding in that gaze, a silent communication that left her with no doubt. This man was part of the resistance. Before she could process this revelation, Zara found herself face to face with a new potential buyer. The alien was massive, easily 3 meters tall, with a body that seemed to be composed of writhing tentacles barely contained within an exoskeleton of chitinous plates. Its eye stalks waved lazily as it regarded her. Interesting specimen, it rumbled, its translator rendering its speech in a deep, resonant bass. I've never owned a human before. Tell me, little one, what skills you possess that might make you worth my investment. Zara stood straight, meeting the alien's gaze without flinching. In that moment, she made a decision. If she was to have any hope of escape, of making contact with the resistance, she needed to be sold, to leave the heavily guarded auction floor and enter the wider world of the station. I am Dr. Zara Novak, she said, infusing her voice with all the authority she could muster. Xenobiologist of Earth. My knowledge of alien life forms and adaptive biology is unparalleled. I can be an invaluable asset in any scientific endeavor or exploratory mission. The alien's eye stalks quivered with what might have been interest. Is that so? Perhaps a demonstration is in order. It gestured to a Vrax guard who approached with a small container. Inside was a squirming mass of phosphorescent tendrils. This is Exorexian brain leech, the alien explained. Highly prized for its psychoactive secretions, but notoriously difficult to keep alive in captivity. Tell me, human, what would you suggest to ensure its survival? Zara's mind raced, drawing on every scrap of xenobiological knowledge she possessed. She began to speak, outlining a care regimen that incorporated aspects of the creature's presumed native environment. As she talked, she saw the alien's eye stalks quiver with increasing excitement. Impressive, It rumbled when she'd have finished. Very impressive indeed. You may yet prove to be a worthwhile investment. It turned to the Vrak's overseer. I will pay your asking price for this one. As the transaction was completed and Zara was led away to be prepared for transfer to her new owner, her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and anticipation. She was leaving the relative safety of the auction floor for the unknown dangers of life as a purchased slave, but with that danger came opportunity. Somewhere out there, the mysterious human man and the underground resistance were waiting. Zara squared her shoulders, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. She was no longer just fighting for her own freedom. She was part of something larger now, a struggle against an injustice that spanned the stars. As she was escorted onto her new owner's ship, Zara allowed herself a small, grim smile. The Vraks and their allies had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity. They thought they were dealing with simple, primitive creatures to be bought and sold on a whim. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. The human agent. Derek Hawkins adjusted the collar of his synth-leather jacket, his eyes scanning the crowded promenade of the Grand Bazaar. To the casual observer, he appeared to be just another spacer, one of the countless free traders and mercenaries that called the massive station home. But beneath his carefully crafted exterior, Derek's mind was razor-sharp, processing every detail of his surroundings with the precision of a trained operative. He'd been on the station for 3 standard months now, slowly working his way into the complex social hierarchy of the bazaar. It had been painstaking work, building a cover identity strong enough to withstand the Vraks' notorious security protocols. But now, finally, he was in position to make a real difference. Derek's wrist computer buzzed softly, displaying a coded message that would appear innocuous to anyone else. To him, it was the signal he'd been waiting for. Another human had been brought to the bazaar, a scientist named Zara Novak. As he made his way through the bustling crowds, Derek's mind raced. How many of his people had been taken? How long had this been going on without Earth's knowledge? The thought made his blood boil, but he forced the anger down. Emotion had no place in his work. Cool logic and careful planning were the tools that would bring down this interstellar slave trade. He rounded a corner and entered one of the bazaar's countless cantinas, a dimly lit establishment that catered to a diverse alien clientele. Derek made his way to the bar, ordering a drink with a subtle hand gesture that marked him as a member of the underground to those who knew what to look for. Moments later, a hooded figure slid onto the stool next to him. "You're late," a voice hissed, barely audible of the cantina's ambient noise. Fashionably so, Derek replied with a smirk. "What have you got for me, Lorax?" The hood shifted slightly, revealing a glimpse of iridescent scales. Lorax was a saurian, a reptilian species known for their sharp minds and sharper claws. "Your countryman has been sold," Lorax whispered, "to Grokthar the Collector. Not ideal, but it could be worse. The Vraks were asking an absurd price. Seems humans are becoming quite the hot commodity." Derek's jaw clenched. Any chance of intercepting the transfer? Lorax's tail twitched beneath their cloak, a sign of agitation. "Too risky. Grokthar's ship is already preparing for departure, but I've managed to get you on the passenger manifest. If you hurry, you can be on board before they leave dock." Derek nodded, sliding a credit chip across the bar. "You've done well, my friend. Keep your ears open. Things are going to heat up around here soon." As he left the cantina, Derek's mind was already several steps ahead, planning his next moves. Grokthar the Collector was a known quantity in certain circles, a wealthy eccentric with a passion for acquiring rare and exotic specimens from across the galaxy. If Zara could keep her wits about her, she might be safer in his menagerie than she would have been in the hands of a less enthusiastic owner. Derek made his way to the docking bay where Grokthar's ship was berthed, a sleek vessel that gleamed with the unmistakable sheen of advanced technology. He presented his forged credentials to the bored-looking Vrax guard at the gangway, his heart rate steady even as adrenaline surged through his veins. Once on board, Derek found his assigned quarters, a small utilitarian cabin that befitted his cover as a low-ranking crew member. He stowed his meager belongings and immediately set to work, using the ship's computer terminal to access whatever information he could about the vessel's layout and crew complement. Hours passed as Derek familiarized himself with his new surroundings. The ship hummed to life around him, artificial gravity engaging as they prepared for departure. Through his cabin's small viewport, he watched the sprawling expanse of the Grand Bazaar recede into the distance, replaced by the stark beauty of open space. It was well into the ship's night cycle when Derek finally made his move. Using a series of codes provided by the Resistance, he bypassed the security locks on his cabin door and slipped into the darkened corridor beyond. His destination, the ship's menagerie, where he hoped to find Zara and the other specimens Grokthar had acquired. As he navigated the ship's winding passages, Derek's enhanced senses, a parting gift from Earth's Covert Operations Division, were on high alert. He could hear the faint whir of security drones patrolling distant sections of the ship, smell the acrid tang of alien atmospheres leaking from containment fields. Finally, he reached the entrance to the menagerie. The massive doors were sealed tight, protected by a security system far more advanced than anything he'd encountered on the rest of the ship. Derek's lips quirked in a humorless smile. Of course, Grokthar would spare no expense to protect his prized collection. He reached into a hidden compartment in his jacket, withdrawing a small device that looked like nothing more than a simple data chip. In reality, it was a highly sophisticated hacking tool, capable of interfacing with and subverting almost any known computer system. Derek held his breath as he pressed it against the door's control panel, praying that the Resistance's intelligence on Grokthar's security protocols was accurate. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then, with a soft chime that seemed deafening in the silence of the corridor, the doors began to slide open. Derek slipped inside, his eyes widening as he took in the sight before him. The menagerie was vast, far larger than should have been possible given the ship's external dimensions. Derek realized he was looking at some sort of space-warping technology, creating a pocket dimension within the vessel itself. Stretching out in every direction were habitats of every conceivable type, swamps teeming with alien life, arid deserts dotted with crystalline structures, even tanks of roiling liquid that might have been home to aquatic species. And there, in a habitat that looked unlovingly like a sterile laboratory, was Zara. She sat at a workstation, poring over holographic displays filled with data. Even from a distance, Derek could see the tension in her posture, the wariness etched into her features. He approached cautiously, mindful of any alarms or sensors that might give him away. When he was close enough to be heard without raising his voice, he cleared his throat softly. "Dr. Novak," he said, keeping his tone even and calm. "I'm here to help." Zara's head snapped up, her eyes wide with surprise and a flicker of hope. You're human," she breathed, rising slowly from her chair. "Are you with the Resistance? The one I saw in the bazaar?" Derek nodded, a grim smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Derek Hawkins, at your service. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances, but I'm afraid we don't have much time for pleasantries. How secure is his habitat? Any surveillance we need to worry about?" Zara's scientific mind kicked into high gear, pushing aside her initial shock. "I've been studying the systems here. There are cameras, but I've managed to loop the feed in this section. We should have a few minutes before anyone notices." "Impressive," Derek said, his estimation of the xenobiologist rising. "All right, here's the situation. We can't risk a full extraction right now. Grokthar's security is too tight, and we're in deep space. But I can get you information, tools, whatever you need to prepare for when the time comes." Zara's eyes blazed with determination. "What I need is to get everyone out of here. Not just the humans, all of them. The things I've seen, the experiments Grokthar is conducting, it's monstrous." Derek held up a hand, his expression sympathetic but firm. "I understand, believe me. But we have to be smart about this. A failed escape attempt could doom not just us, but the entire resistance movement. We need to gather intelligence, build a network among the other captives, and wait for the right moment. Zara opened her mouth to argue, but then closed it, nodding reluctantly. You're right, of course. It's hard to be patient when you see such suffering every day. I know, Derek said softly, but that patience might just save countless lives in the long run. Now, tell me everything you've learned about this ship, about Grukthar, about the other captives. Every piece of information could be crucial. For the next hour, Zara briefed Derek on everything she had observed since being brought aboard. She spoke of the other slaves, beings from a dozen different worlds, each with their own unique abilities and knowledge. She detailed Grukthar's cruel experiments, his obsession with pushing the boundaries of biology and physics. As she talked, Derek's respect for her grew. Despite the horrors she had witnessed, Zara's scientific curiosity remained undiminished. She had turned her captivity into an opportunity, studying the advanced alien technology around her with an eye towards eventual escape. You've done well, Derek said when she had finished. Better than we could have hoped. I'll get word to the Resistance about what you've told me. In the meantime, I'll do what I can to improve conditions for you and the others. Small changes, nothing that will arouse suspicion. Zara nodded, then hesitated. There's something else. A Kalian child I saw in the bazaar. Do you know if... Derek's expression softened. The Resistance managed to intercept that sale. The child is safe, on their way back to what's left of their homeworld. Tears welled up in Zara's eyes, a mix of relief and pent-up emotion. Thank you, she whispered, for telling me that, for being here. I was starting to lose hope. Hope is the one thing they can never take from us, Derek said firmly. Remember that, Dr. Novak. No matter how dark things seem, humanity has faced worse odds and come out on top. We'll do it again. A soft chime from Derek's wrist computer broke the moment. I have to go, he said urgently. The security loot won't hold much longer. I'll be in touch when I can. Stay strong, stay smart, and be ready. Our chance will come. As Derek slipped back into the shadows of the menagerie, making his way back to his quarters, his mind was already racing with plans. The information Zara had provided was invaluable, but it also painted a picture of a situation far more complex and dire than they had initially believed. This wasn't just about freeing a few human captives anymore. What Grukthar was doing here, the technologies he was developing, if even half of what Zara had told him was true, it could shift the balance of power in the entire sector. Derek sent a coded transmission to his handlers back on Earth, knowing that the message might take weeks to reach them through secure channels. But that was all right. He was in this for the long haul. As he lay in his bunk, feigning sleep while his mind continued to work, Derek allowed himself a small, grim smile. The Vraks, Grukthar, all the slavers and tyrants who thought they could treat sentient beings as property, they had no idea what was coming. Humanity had entered the galactic stage, and they were about to make one hell of an entrance, the escape attempt. The days aboard Grukthar's ship blurred together for Zara, a monotonous cycle of forced research and wary observation. But beneath the surface, a current of anticipation thrummed through her veins. Derek's presence had rekindled her hope, and every moment not spent on her assigned tasks was dedicated to preparation. She had made connections with other captives, a diverse group of beings united by their desire for freedom. There was Tselkar, a crystalline entity capable of absorbing and redirecting energy, Lumi, a bioluminescent creature with natural cloaking abilities, and Vaughn, a silicon-based life form with incredible strength and resilience. Together, they formed the core of what Zara had come to think of as their resistance cell. Information was shared in whispers, plans made in the briefest of moments when Grukthar's attention was elsewhere. Derek, for his part, had been busy. Using his cover as a low-ranking crew member, he had managed to sabotage key systems throughout the ship, creating weaknesses they could exploit when the time came. He had also been stockpiling supplies, food, medical equipment, and even a few weapons, all carefully hidden away in rarely used maintenance ducts. The catalyst for their escape attempt came unexpectedly. Grokvar's ship had docked at a remote outpost for resupply, and the collector himself had disembarked to negotiate a trade for some new specimens. It was the opening they had been waiting for. Zara was in her lab when the alarms began to blare. Red emergency lights bathed the menagerie in an eerie glow as Derek's voice crackled over her hidden communicator. "It's time," he said tersely. "You know what to do. Good luck." Heart pounding, Zara sprang into action. She input a series of commands into her workstation, triggering a cascade of system failures throughout the menagerie. Containment fields flickered and died, environmental controls went haywire, and the doors to every habitat slid open. Chaos erupted as confused and frightened captives spilled out into the central hub of the menagerie. Zara raised her voice, projecting as much authority as she could muster. "Everyone, stay calm. This is our chance for freedom, but we must work together." To her relief, the other members of their makeshift resistance cell stepped forward, helping to organize the panicking crowd. Zelkar's crystalline form pulsed with stored energy, ready to defend against any guards that might appear. Lumi's bioluminescent patterns shifted rapidly, creating a disorienting light show that would make it difficult for pursuers to focus. Vaughn took up a position near the main exit, prepared to use brute strength if necessary. Zara led the way through the twisting corridors of the ship, relying on the mental map she had painstakingly constructed over weeks of careful observation. They encountered little resistance at first. Derek's sabotage had thrown the ship's security systems into disarray, but their luck couldn't hold forever. As they approached the docking bay where Derek had prepared a shuttle for their escape, a squad of Vrax guards rounded the corner, energy weapons at the ready. "Halt!" the lead guard bellowed, its translator rendering the word in a dozen different languages. "Return to your habitats immediately or face termination." Zara's mind raced, assessing their options. There were too many innocents in their group to risk a frontal assault. Just as she was about to attempt negotiations, a blur of motion caught her eye. Derek dropped from an overhead maintenance shaft, landing behind the Vrax squad. In a flurry of precise strikes, he incapacitated 2 guards before the others could even react. The remaining Vrax turned to face this new threat, giving Zara and the others the opening they needed. "Now," she shouted. Zelkar unleashed a burst of stored energy, overloading the guards' weapons. Lumi's bioluminescence intensified, blinding their opponents. Vaughn charged forward, his silicon-based body shrugging off energy blasts as he bowled through the disoriented Vrax. In moments, the skirmish was over. Derek stood amidst the unconscious guards, breathing heavily but otherwise unharmed. "Nice teamwork," he said with a grim smile. "But we're not out of this yet. The shuttle's just ahead. Let's move." They piled into the docking bay, a motley crew of escaped slaves and 2 determined humans. The shuttle Derek had prepared was a tight fit, but somehow they managed to cram everyone inside. Zara found herself in the co-pilot's seat, her scientific knowledge of alien tech making her the best candidate to assist Derek. As the docking bay doors began to close, Derek fired up the shuttle's engines. "Hold on to something," he warned. "This is going to be rough." The shuttle shot forward, scraping against the barely open bay doors with a screech of tortured metal. They burst out into open space, alarms blaring behind them as Grokvar's ship came alive with frantic activity. "We've got company," Zara announced, her eyes fixed on the sensor readouts. 3 pursuit craft, closing fast. Derek's hands flew over the controls, pushing the overloaded shuttle to its limits. "We just need to stay ahead of them long enough to make the jump to hyperspace," he said through gritted teeth. "There's a resistance safe house in the outer rim. If we can make it there, we'll be okay." Energy blasts from the pursuit craft rocked the shuttle, shields flaring as they absorbed the impacts. Zara worked furiously to reroute power, trying to squeeze every last ounce of performance from their overtaxed systems. A particularly violent hit sent shudders through the shuttle's frame. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. "Port engines failing," Zara reported, her voice tight with tension. "We can't take much more of this." Derek's expression hardened. "We're not going down without a fight. Selka," he called out. "Think you can give our friends back there a taste of their own medicine?" The crystalline being pulsed with excitement. "It would be my pleasure," Selka chimed, moving to the rear of the shuttle. With a sound like breaking glass, Selka began to absorb the energy from the pursuer's weapons, storing it within its crystalline matrix. "Everyone brace yourselves," Derek warned. "This is going to get bumpy." With a burst of released energy, Zelka sent a shockwave rippling out behind the shuttle. Two of the pursuit craft were caught in the blast, spinning out of control. The third, however, managed to avoid the worst of it and pressed its attack. "They're charging weapons," Zara said, her eyes glued to the sensors. "I don't think we can survive another direct hit." Time seemed to slow for Zara in that moment. She thought of Earth, of Mars, of all she had left behind. She thought of the injustices she had witnessed, the lives ruined by the cruel machinations of beings like Grokfar and the Vraks. And in that crystalline moment of clarity, she made a decision. "I have an idea," she said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "But it's risky. If I'm wrong, we'll all die." Derek met her gaze, understanding passing between them. "Sometimes you have to roll the hard six," he said with a nod. "Do it." Zora's fingers flew over the controls, inputting a complex series of commands. She was drawing on everything she had learned about alien technology, every scrap of knowledge gleaned from her time in Grokfar's lab. If she was right, if the theories she had been developing held true. The shuttle's systems groaned in protest as Zara pushed them far beyond their intended parameters. Energy crackled around the hull, space itself seeming to warp and twist. "Hold on," Zara shouted, and slammed her hand down on the final control. Reality itself seemed to hiccup. For a breathless moment, the shuttle and its occupants existed in a state of quantum uncertainty, neither here nor there. Then, with a thunderous crack, they snapped back into normal space, light years away from their pursuers. Stunned silence filled the shuttle's cramped interior. Then, gradually, a wave of cheers and exclamations of relief swept through the escaped captives. They had done it. Against all odds, they were free. Derek turned to Zara, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and professional respect. "How?" he asked simply. Zara let out a shaky laugh, the adrenaline of their narrow escape still surging through her. "I've been studying Grokfar's research into space-time manipulation. I thought, well, I hoped I could use it to create a localized wormhole, a shortcut through space-time." "You hoped?" Derek repeated, a grin tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Well, it was that or be blown to atoms," Zara replied with a shrug. "Seemed worth a shot." As the reality of their escape began to sink in, Zara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. They were alive, they were free, and they had struck a blow against the very heart of the slave trade that had ensnared them. But as she looked around at the diverse group of beings they had rescued, Zara knew their work was far from over. There were countless others still in chains, and the Vraks and their allies would not take this defeat lightly. "So," she said, turning to Derek, "what's our next move?" Derek's expression turned serious. "We get these folks to safety, and then we take the fight to them. The Vraks, Grokfar, all of them. It's time to show the galaxy that humanity is a force to be reckoned with." As the shuttle limped towards the Resistance safehouse, Zara felt a fierce pride well up within her. They had faced impossible odds and emerged victorious, and this was just the beginning. The real battle for the future of humanity, and for justice across the stars, was about to begin. The revolution. The Resistance safehouse turned out to be an abandoned mining facility on a desolate moon, its rough-hewn corridors a far cry from the clinical sterility of Grokfar's ship. As Zara helped the last of the escaped slaves disembark from their battered shuttle, she couldn't help but feel a mix of relief and trepidation. They were safe for now, but what came next? Derek seemed to read her thoughts. "Come on," he said, gesturing for her to follow. "There's someone you need to meet." They made their way deeper into the facility, passing through a series of security checkpoints manned by a diverse array of beings, some human, others decidedly not. Finally, they entered what appeared to be a command center, its walls lined with holographic displays showing star charts, ship movements, and streams of data Zara couldn't begin to decipher. At the center of it all stood a woman who radiated authority. She was tall, with close-cropped grey hair and eyes that seemed to pierce right through you. When she spoke, her voice was low and gravelly, tinged with an accent Zara couldn't quite place. "Welcome to the revolution, Dr. Novak," she said. "I'm Admiral Helena Vance, Earth Intelligence Service. I understand we owe you a debt of gratitude for the success of this operation." Zara blinked, momentarily stunned. Earth Intelligence, but I thought, we didn't know about any of this. The slave trade, the aliens. Admiral Vance's expression hardened. A necessary deception, I'm afraid. We've known about the wider galactic community for decades, but we needed time to prepare. To build our strength in secret before revealing ourselves. "And now?" Zara asked, a mix of emotions swirling within her, anger at the deception, understanding of its necessity, and a burning curiosity about what came next. "Now," Vance said, a grim smile playing at the corners of her mouth, "we fight back. Your escape, and the data you've brought us about Grokvar's operations, has given us the opening we've been waiting for." Over the next few hours, Vance and her team briefed Zara and Derek on the true scope of the conflict they had stumbled into. The slave trade was just one facet of a much larger struggle. Various factions within the galactic community were vying for dominance, with humanity caught in the crossfire. "We've been building alliances," Vance explained, gesturing to a star chart that showed hundreds of worlds linked by glowing lines. Species who chafe under Vrak's rule or who fear Grokvar's experiments. But we needed a catalyst, something to unite them and spark open rebellion. "And that's us?" Zara asked, incredulous. "A handful of escaped slaves." Derek shook his head, a fierce pride in his eyes. "Not just us, every being we freed, every life we touched. Word of our escape is spreading like wildfire through the underground networks. We're becoming a symbol, Zara. A rallying cry for everyone who's ever dreamed of freedom." As if to underscore his point, one of the technicians called out from a nearby console, "Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from all over the sector. Slave revolts on a dozen worlds, ships mutinying against Vrak's controllers." Vance nodded, unsurprised. "And so it begins. Zara, Derek, I won't lie to you. The road ahead will be hard. The Vraks and their allies won't give up their power without a fight. But with your help, I believe we can win this war and forge a better future for all sentient beings." Zara took a deep breath, her scientific mind racing with the possibilities and challenges that lay ahead. "What do you need from us?" "Everything," Vance said simply. "Your knowledge of alien biology and technology, your first-hand experience with Vrak's operations, but most of all, your spirit, the same determination that kept you going through captivity and drove you to attempt what should have been an impossible escape." Over the next weeks, Zara threw herself into her new role with the same passion she had once applied to her xenobiological studies. She worked closely with the Resistance's science team, applying her unique insights to develop new technologies and strategies. One of her first breakthroughs came in adapting the wormhole technology she had used in their escape. With refinement, it became a key asset in the Resistance's hit-and-run tactics, allowing their ships to strike at Vrak's targets and vanish before retaliation could arrive. Derek, meanwhile, took charge of training new operatives, both human and alien. His experience in covert operations proved invaluable in preparing teams for infiltration missions deep in enemy territory. But perhaps their most important contribution was in building bridges between the diverse species that made up the growing rebellion. Zara and Derek's time as captors had given them a unique perspective, allowing them to find common ground between beings that might otherwise have remained mistrustful of each other. Selkar, Lumi, and Vaughn became key allies in this effort. Each brought their own unique abilities and perspectives to the resistance, helping to forge a truly interstellar alliance against tyranny. As the rebellion grew, so did the response from the Vraks and their allies. Grokthar, enraged by the loss of his prized specimens, threw his considerable resources into hunting down the escaped slaves. Battles raged across the sector, with both sides scoring victories and suffering losses. Through it all, Zara found herself changing, growing. The naive scientist who had once marveled at the wonders of Mars was gone, replaced by a hardened veteran of an interstellar war. But her core, her curiosity, her compassion, her drive to understand and improve the world around her, remained unshaken. It was during a rare moment of quiet that Zara found herself standing before a viewport, gazing out at the unfamiliar stars. Derek joined her, his presence a comforting constant in the chaos of their new lives. "Credit for your thoughts?" he asked softly. Zara was silent for a long moment before responding. "I was thinking about Earth," she said finally. "About how small and insignificant I used to think we were in the grand scheme of things. And now we're at the center of a galactic revolution," Derek finished for her. "Funny how things work out, isn't it?" Zara nodded, a wry smile tugging at her lips. "Do you think we can really do this? Overthrow the Vraks, end the slave trade, change the very fabric of interstellar society?" Derek's expression turned serious. "I think we have to try. And if there's one thing I've learned about humanity, it's that we're at our best when the odds are stacked against us. We're stubborn that way." Before Zara could respond, alarms began to blare throughout the facility. Admiral Vance's voice came over the comm system, tense but controlled. "All personnel to battle stations. We've received word that Grokfar's fleet is on the move. They found us." Zara and Derek shared a look, years of shared struggles and triumphs passing between them in an instant. Without a word, they turned and sprinted towards the command center. The next chapter of their revolution was about to be written, and they intended to see it through to the end. As they ran, Zara's mind was already racing, formulating plans and strategies. She thought of all they had accomplished, of the allies they had made and the lives they had changed. And she knew, with a certainty that ran bone deep, that no matter what Grokthar threw at them, humanity and its allies would find a way to prevail. The revolution had begun as a spark of hope in the darkness of captivity. Now, it had grown into a conflagration that threatened to reshape the very stars themselves. And at its heart stood two humans who had refused to break, refused to give up, no matter the odds. As they entered the command center, the air thick with tension and purpose, Zara allowed herself a small, fierce smile. The Vraks had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity. Now they were about to learn just how costly that mistake would be. The final battle for the future of the galaxy was about to begin, and Zara Novak, once a captive and now a leader of the revolution, was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For in her heart, she carried the indomitable spirit of humanity, a force that, once awakened, could never truly be conquered. The triumph. The command center of the resistance base thronged with nervous energy as Zara, Derek, and Admiral Vance huddled around the central holographic display. The ghostly image of Grokfar's approaching fleet hung in the air before them, a looming threat that seemed to grow larger with each passing moment. "We're outnumbered and outgunned," Vance said, her voice tight but controlled. "But we've got one advantage they don't expect. We're not alone." As if on cue, the comm system crackled to life. A cacophony of voices filled the air, each speaking in a different alien language. The universal translator struggled to keep up, but the message was clear. Help was on the way. Zara felt a surge of pride as she recognized some of the voices. Selkar, Lumi, Vaughn, beings she had once stood beside as fellow captives, were now leading their own factions of the rebellion. The network of alliances they had painstakingly built over the past months was coming to fruition at last. "It's time," Derek said, his eyes meeting Zara's with a mix of determination and something deeper, unspoken. "Ready to make history, Dr. Novak?" Zara nodded, squaring her shoulders. "Let's show them what humanity is made of." As they moved to their stations, Admiral Vance's voice rang out across the facility. "All personnel, prepare for imminent engagement. Remember why we fight, not just for ourselves, but for every being who has ever known the yoke of oppression. Today, we change the course of galactic history." The next hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Zara found herself at the heart of the Resistance's scientific team, coordinating with alien allies to implement strategies they had developed over months of preparation. One of their key weapons was an adaptation of the wormhole technology Zara had first used in their escape from Grokvar's ship. Now refined and weaponized, it allowed their smaller fleet to run circles around the Vrak's lumbering capital ships, striking hard and fast before disappearing again. Derek, meanwhile, led a series of daring boarding actions. Using cloaked shuttles and the element of surprise, his teams infiltrated key enemy vessels, sabotaging systems and sowing chaos in their wake. But despite their clever tactics and the bravery of their allies, the sheer firepower of Grokvar's fleet began to take its toll. One by one, resistance ships winked out of existence, overwhelmed by the enemy's superior numbers. Just when it seemed the tide was turning against them, Zara had an epiphany. "The Collector's obsession," she murmured, her eyes widening. "That's the key." She rushed to Admiral Vance, outlining her plan in rapid-fire bursts. The Admiral listened intently, her expression shifting from skepticism to grim determination. "It's risky," Vance said finally, "but at this point, I think it's our only shot. Make it happen, Doctor." Zara nodded, already turning to bark orders into her comm unit. Across the battlefield, resistance ships began to fall back, drawing Grokvar's fleet towards a specific set of coordinates. "What are you up to?" Derek's voice crackled over the comm as his team returned from their latest boarding mission. "Remember how Grokvar's ship had that pocket dimension for his menagerie?" Zara replied, her fingers flying over her console. "Well, I've been studying the data we gathered. I think we can turn his own technology against him." As she spoke, a shimmering distortion began to form in space, directly in the path of the advancing Vrak's fleet. It started small, barely visible against the backdrop of stars, but quickly grew until it dwarfed even the largest capital ships. "By the void," Derek breathed. "You've created a massive wormhole." "Not just a wormhole," Zara corrected, a fierce grin spreading across her face. "A trap." As the Vrak's fleet approached the anomaly, drawn by its similarity to Grokvar's prized collection technology, the trap was sprung. The wormhole's event horizon flared with blinding light, tendrils of energy lashing out to ensnare the enemy ships. Grokvar's voice boomed across all frequencies, a mixture of rage and disbelief. "What is this treachery? Release us at once, you primitive." His words were cut off as his flagship, along with a significant portion of the Vrak's fleet, was drawn inexorably into the swirling vortex. In a matter of minutes, the balance of power had shifted dramatically. But the battle was far from over. The remaining Vrak's ships, now leaderless and in disarray, fought with the desperation of those who knew defeat meant annihilation. The Resistance fleet pressed their advantage, their earlier losses fueling a burning desire for victory. Zara found herself on the bridge of the Resistance flagship, coordinating with their allies to maximize the effectiveness of their attacks. Derek's voice was a constant presence in her ear, relaying information from the front lines and offering strategic advice. As the final Vrak's dreadnought fell silent, its systems overloaded by a precision strike from one of Selkar's energy-absorbing ships, a hush fell over the battlefield. For a moment, it seemed as if the very stars were holding their breath. Then, gradually, a wave of cheers and exclamations of joy swept through the Resistance fleet. They had done it. Against all odds, they had triumphed over one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. In the days that followed, the full impact of their victory began to sink in, with Grok-Far and a significant portion of the Vrax leadership trapped in the pocket dimension of Zara's creation. The oppressive regime that had dominated this sector of space for centuries began to crumble. World after world threw off the shackles of Vrax control, inspired by the examples set by the Resistance. The vast network of the slave trade, deprived of its primary enforcers, collapsed almost overnight. But with victory came new challenges. The power vacuum left by the Vrax threatened to plunge the sector into chaos. It fell to Zara, Derek, and their allies to help forge a new galactic order, one built on principles of freedom, cooperation, and mutual respect. Months after the final battle, Zara found herself standing before the newly formed Galactic Council, a diverse assembly of representatives from dozens of species. As she prepared to present humanity's case for full membership, she caught Derek's eye in the audience. He gave her a subtle nod, a gesture that conveyed volumes. Taking a deep breath, Zara began to speak. "Esteemed members of the Council, I stand before you not just as a representative of Earth, but as a symbol of what we can achieve when we stand united against tyranny." Her words rang out clear and strong, telling the story of humanity's journey from ignorance to enlightenment, from captivity to freedom, from isolation to being the cornerstone of a new galactic community. She spoke of the lessons learned, the bonds forged, and the challenges that still lay ahead. As she concluded her speech, Zara looked out over the assembled delegates, beings of all shapes, sizes, and compositions, united in their desire for a better future. And she knew, with a certainty that ran bone deep, that this was only the beginning. Humanity had taken its first true steps onto the galactic stage. They had faced the crucible of slavery and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. Whatever challenges the universe might throw at them next, Zara was confident that they would face them head-on with the same spirit that had carried them through their darkest hours. As the council chamber erupted in applause, Zara allowed herself a moment of reflection. She thought of that day on Mars when her life had changed forever, of the horrors she had endured and the wonders she had witnessed. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but she wouldn't have changed a moment of it. For in the end, it was not just Zara who had been liberated from slavery. In rising to meet the challenge posed by the Vrax and their ilk, humanity as a whole had broken free of the bonds of its own limitations. They had proven to themselves and to the galaxy at large that they were capable of greatness beyond measure. As she stepped down from the podium, Derek was there to meet her, a proud smile on his face. "Well done, Doctor," he said softly. "Think we've earned ourselves a bit of a break." Zara laughed, feeling lighter than she had in years. "Maybe a short one," she replied with a grin. "But something tells me the galaxy isn't done with us yet." Together, they turned to face the council chamber, ready to embrace whatever new adventures awaited them among the stars. For they were no longer merely humans. They were citizens of a vast and wondrous universe, with endless possibilities stretching out before them. The story of their enslavement was over. The story of their triumph had only just begun.